Fan service. Now, you may be a gamer, a weeb, or a cinephile, so you've definitely seen it before. Now, you may love it or hate it, but you did click on this video, and since they were big boobs, here we are. So what is fan service? Well, fan service can come in all shapes and sizes, but essentially boils down to anything that's added to a piece of media with the sole purpose to excite the audience. And this can show up in a ton of different ways, like overly gratuitous gore in horror movies, cameos of popular characters, or a plot detour that's only included as a nod to longtime fans. Heck, cheerleaders in sporting events could be considered fan service. Taylor Swift has been referred to as the ringmaster of fan service for all of the cryptic clues in her lyrics that only true Swifties get. And even with the broader definition, most of the time when someone refers to fan service, what they mean is panty shots, bouncing breasts, revealing outfits, and whatever's happening here. Originating in the Japanese anime and manga scene in the 1970s and 80s, it has obviously expanded to other languages and media over time. It's about servicing the fan, giving the fans exactly what they want. Now, ecchi is a slang term in Japanese that's closely tied with fan service and is often used by Western fans of Japanese media to describe playful sexuality, but is distinct from, say, hentai, which tends to focus on more overt sexuality with fetishes or perversion. So that brings up the question, what's the line? At what point is it no longer fan service? Well, I'd say if the content that's meant to excite isn't just added to the media, but is the media, we've likely crossed from fan service to something else, whether that's adult content or some form of exploitation. The line is definitely blurred, and the definition isn't perfect, but that's what I'll be using going forward. So, while sexual fan service is included in just about every medium, from ripped superheroes to scantily clad women to The Golden Bachelor, you tend to only really hear the term used in reference to anime or video games. And as someone who plays and reviews a lot of video games with fan service, hell, I have a whole playlist of fan service game reviews that isn't short. I see a lot of comments about fan service and how often it's perceived as a negative. It's the reason some people give for hating a certain game or genre. If it wasn't for all the fan service, this would be a great game. And even when people are more accepting, they tend to have complicated feelings about it. So I thought it'd be interesting to take a deep dive into the world of video game fan service. Where did it start? Why is it so widespread despite all the negativity? And can fan service ever be a good thing? That being said, I know this video may have a bit of fan service itself. I know. So if you're opposed to panty shots, jiggling breasts, and a clumsy innuendo or two, or you're otherwise one of the prudes,
I don't know why, but for some apparent reason I can't stand women with sexy bodies.
You may want to click off now. I'll give you a second. Alright, that should be enough time. Now for all you degenerates left, there's no better place to start than the beginning, so let's go back.
Play the shitty games and suck ass.
Actually no. Let's go way back, before games, to see where it all started. Fan service was captured on the walls of caves, immortalized in ancient statues, and passed down through legends. And yeah, while it may be a bit of a leap to say it was fan service, there's no doubt particularly attractive features or exciting moments were included and highlighted with the express purpose to make these works more captivating, interesting, and celebrated over time. Fast forward a few millennia to the early 1950s with a little French film Menina la fille sans voiles, or Menina the Girl Without Sails. The titular character Menina was played by a then unknown Brigitte Bardot, who wore a bikini, something considered way too risque for American audiences at the time. The film didn't come out in the States for 6 years, until its star started to gain popularity here. So, when it was finally released in the US, the film was renamed to Menina the Girl in the Bikini, despite her or her bikini only showing up in the last third of the film. Our modern-day definition of fanservice stems from a little-known manga created by Go Nagai in the 1970s called Cutie Honey. The titular character was an android who transforms from a mild-mannered schoolgirl to a superhero to defend Earth from all kinds of evil villains. Cutie Honey's design alone could be considered fanservice, with the unrealistic Barbie proportions, but the fact that she loses all of her clothes during the transformation to her more powerful form created the common trope still used even today. Yeah, have you ever seen that one before? That wasn't the only first for Cutie Honey. This was actually the first shonen manga, or anime, with a female protagonist. You see, this type of media was divided into shonen, which is meant for boys, or shoujo, meant for girls. Before this, there weren't any female heroes in shonen materials. And while a bit experimental for its time, it was clear there was an appetite for this type of content, with Cutie Honey expanding to 2 anime TV series, 2 OVA series, live-action adaptations, and even audio dramas, letting your imagination fill in the visuals. In the 1980s, the term fanservice started to catch on, along with its prevalence, particularly in Japanese media. Full frontal nudity, shower scenes, and lewd camera angles became standard content for anime and manga. It was also around this time that video games became widely available. Just like man's earliest recorded communications, sexual content was a part of the earliest days of video games, showing up on most platforms and across every genre. One of the first video games to feature sexual themes was the 1981 text-based soft adventure, published by Online Systems for the Apple II. Even though it was heavily pirated, it still sold around 25,000 copies, or about 1 copy for every 4 Apple IIs at the time. People just couldn't get enough of that text-based smut. Oh yeah. Though this type of more risque content wasn't always a guarantee for success. Around this time, the unlicensed games Bachelor Party, Beat 'em and Eat 'em, and the notorious Custer's Revenge were almost universally hated. Custer's Revenge is still considered to be one of the worst games ever made, leading to its development company, American Multiple Industries, going out of business shortly after. There were a few other attempts throughout the early and mid-80s, but the industry wouldn't see another big success until 1987 with Leisure Suit Larry. Leisure Suit Larry in the land of the lounge lizards introduced the world to the hopeless Larry Laffer on his eternal quest to get some. Designer Al Lowe essentially mashed elements of soft adventure and King's Quest together to create this cheeky tale, forming a much more compelling experience than those earlier failed attempts. The adult-oriented content is really surprisingly tame, especially by today's standards, delivered mostly through innuendo. But retailers weren't having any of it. Most wouldn't sell the game, and Sierra almost seemed ashamed of it, barely marketing it at all. So early sales were almost non-existent. However, through word of mouth, the game eventually exploded in popularity, becoming a smash hit and spawning a wildly successful franchise that's still around today. Video game fanservice took its next big step forward during the 1990s with the advent of CD-ROMs and real-time 3D graphics.
Show 'em!
Instead of looking like this, games could look as good as this. Oh, hell yeah! This was a transition period for video games as a whole, as developers grappled with how to best use this new technology. Gameplay often taking a backseat to these flashy new graphics.
You and me are friends, right?
Games like Gal's Panic were essentially simple puzzle games, but with the added benefit of slowly revealing pixelated pictures of half-naked ladies. And yeah, while these were extremely basic, there's no denying just how popular they were. How many Gal's Panic games do you think were released in the 1990s? 1, 2, maybe 3? Try tripling that. There were 9 Gal's Panic games released in the 90s alone. And that's not to mention games like Bishoujo Senshi Sailor Moon, where the fanservice, while fairly subtle, was still hard to miss, with the short-skirted, long-legged cast of Sailor Moon kicking the crap out of each other. But 1996 changed everything with the release of Tomb Raider, introducing the world to Lara Croft. At which point, everyone collectively hit puberty. She was a phenomenon and became the first video game sex symbol. Now, she had traditionally attractive beauty with a body that just doesn't quit. Oh yeah! However, other than her chunky design, the fan service was really minimal. But that didn't matter because everyone knew a guy whose cousin's friend definitely saw her naked in the game. Yep, what I wouldn't have done to see her in the boxy flesh. Whispers in the schoolyard turned from rumor into legend as kids shared the definitely 100% foolproof way to get Lara out of her tight spelunking attire. And depending on who heard it from who, the steps would be a little different but always exceedingly complicated. Of course, there was no nude mode, but the sheer fervor surrounding the myth made it clear there was an appetite for sex appeal in gaming. Developers took notice, and fan service started to permeate throughout video games. The early 2000s were an interesting turning point. The video game industry was maturing, the tech continued to advance, and developers were looking to tell bigger, bolder, and more complex stories, catering to older audiences and pushing boundaries. Now let's say you were a developer in the early 2000s and wanted to get your extreme sports game noticed. What would you do? Maybe get a celebrity tie-in? Or go wacky and over the top? Perhaps go all in on the best graphics? Or you could do what Acclaim did in 2002 and just add some naked chicks. Yeah, BMXXX is the game everyone was talking about. Mix Tony Hawk style gameplay with BMX bikes and sprinkle in some girls wearing, well, pretty much nothing. Yes, please. Yeah, and you can even unlock actual footage of real-life strippers. That would have blown my fucking mind to pieces back in the day. Though, despite a super aggressive marketing campaign and all the buzz, it didn't sell all that well. It had everything going for it, so what happened? Well, it was banned in Australia. Sony demanded the nudity was stripped from the PlayStation version, and similar to Leisure Suit Larry, retailers refused to carry it. But unlike Larry, aside from the fan service, the game wasn't really all that fun to play. So without a good game underpinning the experience, it was doomed to fail. The Guy game was another infamous cautionary tale. Released in 2004, this collection of mini-games and basic multiple-choice quiz had real girls who would flash you if you earned enough points. So, nice little incentive there. Now, the infamy comes from one of the models who was actually only 17 when the footage was taken, eventually making the game illegal to buy, sell, or own in many countries. Controversy aside, hot gluing Girls Gone Wild to a history exam wasn't exactly the pinnacle of game design. However, not all fan service is created equal. What is now one of Sony's flagship franchises, God of War, is pure fan service from beginning to end. From the gratuitous, visceral violence, to the bombastic set pieces, to the nude scenes and sexy time minigames, just about everything is meant to excite the audience. Was every bit of that essential to telling the story of Kratos on his quest for revenge? God no. But was it a lot more fun with it in? Hell yeah. And Sony agreed by keeping the nudity in God of War. Unlike BMXXX, the perception was that its inclusion was part of telling this mature story, and not just pandering to horny teens. Throughout the next 2 decades, fan service grew, becoming a part of every type of game. It didn't matter if it was an RPG, a fighting game, or hell, even kids' games. It likely had some fan service. But as fan service became more ubiquitous, it also brought with it louder and louder calls for censorship. It's easy to see why fan service started in Japan. Not only is sexuality and depictions of nudity generally accepted, but there's a widely reported epidemic of loneliness, with many young people in their 20s having never even dated. So, sexual content has always been in high demand. Now, the US on the other hand is bursting with prudes, keeping our sensibilities decades behind many other countries when it comes to sexual content, and why prevalence in video games or cartoons are often considered taboo. Blood and gore is fine, but heaven help you if I see a nipple. I mean, video games are only for kids, right? So there better be a damn good reason you're showing those boobs.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Standards that were codified nearly a century ago still impact the media we consume even today. In the 1930s, the Hays Code created a rigid set of standards for acceptable and unacceptable content in films. This was replaced by the MPAA in the late 1960s, but a lot of the original framework remained. And this same framework became the model for the ESRB in the 1990s, when the video game industry sought to regulate itself amidst a growing outcry against increasingly mature content. And that's not to mention how platform holders themselves have license to apply even stricter standards, further limiting what you can see and play. All of which leads to a patchwork of censorship, with some content getting sanitized regionally or even just between platforms, having a significant impact on what's available. A lot of times the censorship is fairly superficial, like subtle changes in the marketing or box art. It's always amusing to see subtle regional differences, like fake light rays covering up naughty bits, or a wardrobe change to give more coverage, or my favorite, just repositioning an image so no one gets their panties in a wad, or to just cover the panties. And while these changes are often pretty silly, I get them to a certain extent. There isn't an age restriction on looking at the box, so we're erring on the side of caution here. Okay, fine. Where the censorship makes far less sense to me is when aspects of the game itself are altered or removed, so as not to offend our delicate sensibilities. After all, you've now already bought the game, but don't get all of it. That's so shitty. And what's weird is when you can get the same game but uncensored on a different platform. Like how Galgun was censored on the Xbox 360, preventing you from looking up the girl's skirts, but left intact on the PS3. Or how Nicopara had so much content removed from the PS4 version that it was rated E, when the family-friendly Nintendo Switch version was still rated M. Absolutely nuts. Sony has become the most censored platform after they issued new rules for fan service and sexual content in 2018. PlayStation versions are usually the most watered down, and that's a real shame considering it used to be the console of choice for anyone into Japanese games. And yes, this meant fan service included. These tight restrictions have led Marvelous, the publisher of a lot of fan service heavy games, to reconsider any future iterations of Senran Kagura, and the series producer, Kanichiro Takaki, quitting altogether. Even if you hate fan service, I think we can all agree that it sucks to have less choice. And with platforms like YouTube cracking down on any content that isn't kid-friendly, it makes it difficult to even discuss topics like this. Now, I've spent a ridiculous amount of time trying to stick to YouTube standards, but this video will almost undoubtedly get demonetized. And while that really sucks, considering how much time it takes to put a video like this together, it's become par for the course. So if you like what you've seen, hit like, subscribe, and of course, give me your thoughts in the comments below. I'd really appreciate it. And if you want uncensored versions of my videos, check them out on Patreon. We've covered a lot of aspects about fan service, from the history to the censorship, but we haven't touched on why fan service is so divisive. It can all be explained by some sort of prudish sense of decency. I got a secret for you. Most people are pretty horny, even if they don't want to admit it. Big titties and jiggle physics or shredded dudes with rippling muscles are great. Sex sells for a reason. So we have to look a bit deeper. Yes, fan service may seem just like butts, boobs, and skimpy outfits, but it can be so much more than that. And like any aspect of media, how it's used is very important. The level of controversy or celebration often hinges on factors like portrayal, intent, and impact on the overall gaming experience. Like any sexualized depictions of characters that are clearly too young, regardless of the age given in the story. That should be a red line. The Knights of Azure series are these hidden gem JRPGs with a Yuri love story between the two female protagonists and a decent amount of fanservice. No problem there. Knights of Azure 2 adds new characters, including a young chocolatier named Eleanor. And while there's nothing problematic about her initial design, all characters have alternate costumes you can equip, which are some sort of skimpy bathing suit. And that goes for Eleanor too. So even without it being front and center, it's sus to have this feature for a character who looks like this. And trust me, I get cultural differences, but if you're okay with a sexualized character looking underaged, I have somebody I'd like you to meet. Far less problematic, but still not great, is when fanservice appears to take priority over the gameplay. Dead or Alive has become synonymous with fanservice over the years, but it reached a new level with DOA Extreme 3 in 2016. This spin-off received tons of hate, not because of the ridiculously sexualized characters, which has become a staple of the franchise, but for its lack of substantial gameplay, leading many to accuse the developer of prioritizing the fanservice over meaningful content. Tone can also be another make or break for fanservice. Adding a sex joke to an already lighthearted scene can punch it up a notch, adding more levity and humor. The Neptunia series is great at this, where nothing is ever taken too seriously, so adding the occasional misunderstanding or throwing in some innuendo just add to the quirky and silly tone. It's pretty common for games to let you customize the look of your characters, often with some fan-servicey outfits. Now this is all well and good, until you're in a serious scene wearing a bikini talking about the fate of the world. It can just kind of pull you out of the moment. Games that seamlessly integrate fanservice into the storyline or character development, enhancing rather than distracting from the overall experience, tend to be more successful. In Nier Automata, the main character, named 2B, wears, well, this. And there's even a button to blow her clothes off. Yeah. But it's one of the most celebrated games of all time, with sky-high critical reviews and receiving numerous industry awards. But it's filled to the brim with fanservice, so what gives? Well, aside from the fanservice, there's a deep and immersive experience, with a profound story and themes. And whether or not you realize it, 2B's design isn't just fanservice. It actually has a purpose, and one that's really interesting. Without delving into major spoilers, her design is intentionally crafted to contribute to the overarching story and symbolism within the game. Its mix of elegance and vulnerability serves to convey a contrast between her android appearance and the emotional depth she experiences. It adds layers to the narrative, emphasizing the tension between the android's manufactured appearance and their capacity for human-like emotions. If you know anything about the game's director, Yoko Taro, you know he's a horny dude. But he said her design is meant to explore complex themes about the nature of humanity, consciousness, and existentialism. Bayonetta, another awesome and highly acclaimed game, considered to be among the best character action games ever made. And it's also absolutely jam-packed with fanservice. Bayonetta herself is clothed in her own freaking hair. She's constantly making innuendos, posing seductively, licking lollipops for crying out loud, and losing all of her clothes when she transforms. Now, where did we see that before? Similar to Nier Automata, this hypersexualization is completely intentional, and in this case, is reflective of Bayonetta's power and agency. She's not just some object for others to manipulate, she's in full control. So often a woman's sexuality is used against her, but not with Bayonetta. It's on full display, and she owns it. Anyone trying to use her sexuality against her will pay. Don't misunderstand. It's not like fanservice has to be serious or have a deeper purpose to be good. Some of my favorite franchises ever are Senran Kagura, Neptunia, and One-Chanbara, all of which are very, very Japanese, and all of which have tons of fanservice. But what makes it work is it's all in fun. Everything has either a lighthearted or so over-the-top vibe that it can't be taken seriously. With fun gameplay, fun characters, fun stories, they are just meant to be fun, and the fanservice is the icing on this fun cake. adding humor, levity, and yes, fun to these games. And it's exactly what the fans want. We've touched on just about everything there is to fan service for video games, where it started, how it's grown and evolved over the years, the messy use of censorship, and examples of both good and bad uses of fan service. And I don't think fan service will ever go away so long as we support free expression. To give the fans what they want isn't a bad thing, and there's a number of different ways to do it. It's been around since the beginning of storytelling, and hopefully will be around for a long time to come. With all there is to talk about, I hope this highlights how complex this topic can be. And hell, there's still so much more to talk about. But the conversation isn't over. So whether you're a gamer, a weeb, or a cinephile, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What did I miss? What do you still want to know about? And did this change your perception about fan service? If you liked the video, hit like and of course subscribe. And if you want more of my thoughts on fan service, check out my video right here. I want to thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.